differently than they work before. So if your stomach is growling or you have some other kind of gastro issues going on, you might, everybody else might hear about it. Well, they kept a couple of those mics that still work with the system in case, you know, for some reason you needed it. So I'm sure if you prefer that, Brian can hook you up.
It may be good if someone's very energetic or doing a presentation to walk around the room.
The old ones? Okay. Okay.
They had to adjust the sensitivity on the microphones to make sure what needs that they project the way they need to project, so that if somebody is turning this way, it'll pick that up. What that does though, because of the way these are built wired and the sensitivity, when you click your call button, you may hear a little bit of a flicker in the speaker. And then, so just make sure that your microphone is off when you hit your call button.
Then turn on.
When you turn your microphone on, you soft on the button.
Do you hear me? Oh, I guess so. Mine works.
I'd like to call to order the regular meeting of the Council of the City of Springdale for February 7th. If we could stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, Ms. Brown, if you could take roll.
Mr. Gleaves?
Present.
Mr. Jacobs?
Present.
Ms. McFarland?
Present.
Mrs. Sullivan Weisskopf?
Present.
Mr. Vanover?
Present.
Mrs. Webster?
Present.
Mr. Anderson?
Present. All right. Oh, the new mics are working much better so far. Thank you. All right. Next, minutes. Council, before you have the minutes that were presented in your packet for January 17th, 2024, note there was one Scribner's error for a name that was addressed prior to the meeting that may not be reflected in your packet. Other than that, yes, Mr. Gleaves.
Mr. President, are we going to do the prayer?
So we had talked about the invocations at the second meeting of each month.
Okay, I've got, oh, thank you.
All right, so Council, you have the minutes before you. What is your pleasure?
Move to adopt.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Are any questions, discussion, or updates? All right, all those in favor of approving the minutes as published with the one Scribner's correction signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? The minutes are approved with 7 affirmative votes. Next, we have communications. Before we get to communications to Council, I believe administration had some introductions they wanted to start us off with tonight.
Yep. Thank you, Mr. President. Start this evening with Parks and Rec Director Charlie Wilson, and he will be introducing 2 of his staff members.
All right, thank you for having us. Over the last year and a half, we have had a few new hires. We have a few of them here with us here tonight. The first I'm going to call up is Mr. Paul Wagner, if you wouldn't mind coming up here real quick. Paul joined the Springdale Parks and Rec Department as our facility maintenance worker in April of 2023. He currently resides in Fairfield, Ohio with his wife, just up the street here with his wife and daughter and a few of his pups. Paul has a background in manufacturing and has worked previously as a lead machine operator at a local manufacturer, which has served him well in his current position. Paul is always willing to go above and beyond and do whatever we need him to do without any complaint. We love his attitude. In his free time, he enjoys creating art, tattoos, as you might see, and customizing his motorcycle. And then in the fall, he earns a lot of recognition from his neighbors for his different Halloween decorating of his home. So great attitude, and we're very happy to have Paul here. Next up, I have Mr. Nathan Noetke. Nathan has been with the Springdale Parks and Rec Department since November of 2022 as our recreation programmer overseeing our youth and adult sports. Nathan is originally from Athens, no relation to me, or Mr. Jones, I don't believe. But for the past 14 years, he has resided in Texas. Wanting to get closer to family, he moved back to Cincinnati. He has a bachelor's in computer information systems and a master's in sports administration. He has a wealth of experience serving as director of operations for Lifestyle Family Fitness and most recently the U.S. Youth Soccer Association, where he planned and coordinated national level tournaments. In his downtime, he enjoys spending time with his family and fancies himself a barbecue enthusiast. So if you want a good Texas barbecue, this is your man to go to. But we're very grateful to have both of these gentlemen. They have done an excellent job for us so far. Thank you.
Mr. President?
Please.
Thank you. Up next, we have Carl Lamping from our building department, and he plans to introduce 3 different folks here this evening.
Good evening, Council. And Mr. President, thank you for having us tonight. Appreciate it. We've been trying to fill our positions in the building department for the last, just like Parks and Rec, for the last year and a half. As of today, we're fully staffed, but we received news recently that one of our inspectors that we recently hired is going to move on and go back to the city of Cincinnati. So we're going to be talking to Mr. Coleman and trying to get that position refilled. So the building department is not an oversized department. We're pretty small, we're pretty efficient. We've got one full-time and 2 part-time administrative assistants and 3 building inspectors. We do all the inspections for all land development, including the property maintenance, stormwater, rentals, and the building and zoning code. Tonight I want to introduce Garrett Fay, who is a building inspector. He's been with us since 2002. And this is our first time bringing all of our staff together, so that's why it's been so long for us to bring everybody in front of you. Prior to joining Springdale, Garrett has been in the construction industry for over 20 years. He's worked in residential and light commercial, and he's been a building inspector with Hamilton County and a home inspector also. Garrett's a veteran of the U.S. Army, and he currently lives in Green Township with his wife in a house that they designed and built themselves. So, in his free time, Garrett likes enjoying traveling, cycling, soccer, and trying new restaurants. So hopefully we got a lot of restaurants here we can try. Next we have Stephanie Flick. Stephanie comes to us. She originally started as a contract employee in May of this past year, 2023, and she was doing such a good job with some of the duties we had her doing that I asked her to consider. She asked me. We talked. We considered bringing her on as an employee. So she fulfills one of our part-time administrative assistant roles. She lives in Fairfield with her husband, and they have 3 daughters ranging from 23, 20, and 14. In her free time, she enjoys cycling, walking, traveling, and spending time with her family and friends. One of the main duties that she's taking on for us is our scanning of all of our paper records. When I first came here 4 years ago, one of the things that I was really overwhelmed with was all the records. And so she's helping me clean up the records and put it all in electronically. On a side note, I want to announce that she just became a proud grandmother, and if you look at her, I can't believe she's that old. It's a beautiful baby. I saw the picture of the baby today. And lastly, I want to present Retha Bullock. Retha is my full-time administrative assistant. She helps me keep everything straight of all the different rules and meetings and due dates and things like that we have to do to run the Planning Commission and the Board of Zoning Appeals. She started here in November of 23, and prior to working for the city, she has 20 plus years in the administrative field, which includes 7 years of purchasing and inventory experience. She lives in Mason with her husband, and one of the things I found out during her interview is that her husband is a serial killer.
Oh, yeah, good.
That's how she introduced him to us in the interview. Is that right? Did she do that, John?
Tell him to call me.
That's pretty good. So Retha's husband works for Kellogg's and General Mills, sorry, and makes cereal. So we have cereal in the building department if you'd like to pick up a box. That was good. She loves spending time with her 2 children, daughter-in-law, and our 4 grandchildren and 1 great-grandchild. In her free time, Retha enjoys traveling, playing the piano, remodeling, and crocheting. As she learned in her interview, one of her main responsibilities is to keep me out of trouble. So she's got a big job to fill. And those are our new employees in the building department.
Welcome. And for those that might not be aware, Mayor Hawkins is also a full-time criminal defense attorney, just in case people out in Springdale are unaware. All right. Is that it for introductions for tonight? All right. Thank you. Ms. Browder, are there any communications for council tonight?
None, thank you.
All right, moving along. Next, we have communications from the audience. If anyone would like to address council for any reason, this is your chance. Floor is now open. Second call. Third and final call. I'm closing communications from the audience. Next, we'll move on to ordinances and resolutions. Mr. Jacobs, when you're ready, ordinance number 3, 2024. This is a second reading.
Ordinance number 3, 2024, an ordinance amending Chapter 39 of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Springdale, Ohio. Whereas a charter amendment was passed by the voters of Springdale in the general election of November 2021, which eliminated the elected position of Clerk of Council Finance Director, and whereas the approved elimination of the position of Clerk of Council Finance Director became effective December 1st, 2023, and whereas Council seeks to make certain amendments to Chapter 39 of the Code of Ordinances consistent with the charter revisions that eliminated the position of Clerk of Council Finance Director, and whereas along with these changes, other revisions are being recommended to Section 39.05, investments consistent with the Ohio Revised Code. Now therefore be it ordained by the Council of the City of Springdale, members elected thereto concurring. Section 1. Chapter 39 of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Springdale shall be amended as provided for in the attached Exhibit A, which is incorporated herein by reference. All other provisions contained in Chapter 39 of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Springdale not specifically revised in the attached Exhibit A shall remain in full force and effect. Section 2. Council hereby finds and determines that all formal actions relative to the passage of this legislation were taken in an open meeting of this council, and that all deliberations of this council and of its committees, if any, which resulted in formal action, were taken in meetings open to the public in full compliance with applicable legal requirements, including Section 121.22 of the Ohio Revised Code. Section 3. This ordinance shall take effect on the earliest date allowed by law.
All right, Council, you've heard the reading of ordinance number 3, 2024. This is the second reading, so it can be acted on tonight. What is your pleasure?
Move to adopt.
Moved and seconded. Discussion or questions? All right, seeing none. Ms. Browder, if you could poll council.
Ms. Sullivan Wisecup?
Aye.
Mrs. Webster? Aye. Mr. Vanover?
Aye.
Mr. Jacobs?
Aye.
Ms. McFarland?
Aye.
Mr. Gleaves?
Aye.
Mr. Anderson?
Aye. Ordinance 3, 2024 passes with 7 affirmative votes. All right, next we'll move on to ordinance 4, 2024. Again, this is a second reading. Mr. Jacobs, when you're ready.
Ordinance number 4, 2024, an ordinance amending Chapter 154 of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Springdale, Ohio. Whereas the Ohio Department of Natural Resources, ODNR, at the request of the Federal Emergency Management Agency, FEMA, has reviewed and recommended recommendations to FEMA's model regulations, and whereas ODNR, as a representative of FEMA, has requested the City of Springdale amended Chapter 154 of the Ohio Code of Ordinances to keep flood regulations up to date and coordinated with FEMA model regulations, and whereas the city wishes to comply with the ODNR recommendation and FEMA regulations. Now therefore be it ordained by the Council of the City of Springdale, members elected thereto concurring. Section 1, Chapter 154 of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Springdale shall be amended as provided for in the attached Exhibit A, which is incorporated herein by reference. All other provisions contained in Chapter 154 of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Springdale not specifically revised in the attached Exhibit A shall remain in full force and effect. Section 2, Council hereby finds and determines that all formal actions relative to the passage of this legislation were taken in an open meeting of this council, and that all deliberations of this council and of its committees, if any, which resulted in formal action, were taken in meetings open to the public in full compliance with applicable legal requirements, including Section 121.22 of the Ohio Revised Code. Section 3, this ordinance shall take effect on the earliest date allowed by law.
All right, Council, you've heard the reading of ordinance 4, 2024. It is a second reading. What is your pleasure?
Move to adopt.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Questions or discussion? Seeing none. Ms. Browder, poll council.
Ms. Sullivan Wisecup?
Aye.
Mr. Jacobs?
Aye.
Ms. McFarland?
Aye.
Mrs. Webster?
Aye.
Mr. Vanover?
Aye.
Mr. Gleaves?
Aye.
Mr. Anderson?
Aye. Ordinance 4, 2024 passes with 7 affirmative votes. Next, we have ordinance 5, 2024. This does have the emergency clause attached. Mr. Jacobs, when you're ready.
Ordinance number 5, 2024, an ordinance authorizing the city administrator to enter into a memorandum of understanding with the State of Ohio Department of Transportation for the use of jobs and commerce funds to be applied to the cost of the Northland Boulevard reconstruction project and declaring an emergency. Whereas the City of Springdale, the city, is planning a project to replace deteriorated concrete pavement, replace the mast arm signal at Tri-County Parkway, add sidewalks to fill in existing gaps, improve roadway drainage, and complete access management improvements along Northland Boulevard, the project. And whereas the total cost of the project is estimated to exceed $8 million, and whereas in furtherance of the project, the city applied for and received a grant from the ODOT Jobs and Commerce Economic Development Program in the amount of $175,000 that the city seeks to transfer to the Ohio Department of Transportation District 8 to apply towards the cost of the project. Now therefore be ordained by the Council of the City of Springdale, Ohio, members elected thereto concurring. Section 1, that the city authorizes the city administrator to execute a memorandum of understanding with the Ohio Department of Transportation, ODOT, to allow for the ODOT Jobs and Commerce Economic Development Program in the amount of $175,000 to be transferred to ODOT District 8 and applied toward the city's costs associated with the Northland Boulevard Improvement Project, the agreement. A copy of the agreement is attached as Exhibit A and incorporated herein by reference. Section 2, that this council hereby finds and determines that all formal actions relative to the passage of this ordinance were taken in an open meeting of this council, and that all deliberations of this council and of its committees, if any, which resulted in formal action, were taken in meetings open to the public in full compliance with all applicable legal requirements, including Section 121.22 of the Ohio Revised Code. Section 3, that this ordinance shall be an emergency measure necessary for the preservation of the public peace, health, safety, and general welfare, and shall, subject to the terms of Article 2D, 3D of the Charter, be effective immediately. The reason for said declaration of emergency is the need to expedite the execution of the agreement for the funding in accordance with ODOT's schedule for the project. Section 4, this ordinance shall take effect on the earliest date allowed by law.
All right, council, you've heard the reading of Ordinance 5, 2024. It does have the emergency clause and can be acted on tonight. What is your pleasure?
Move to adopt.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Is there questions or discussion? Ms. Sullivan-Wisecup.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just have a really quick question. Mr. Riggs, do we know how much of this project has already been covered and how much we have left that is not funded?
Mr. Riggs.
Yeah, so the estimate, the base estimate, I believe we have, we're overfunded actually for everything, but ODOT's still reviewing the project estimate that we submitted as far as our final tracing package. Since the project is not going to be bid until July 1st, I think is when the bid opening is, or yes, May 1st. July is when the construction is going to start. It's a 2-year construction window. They actually add inflation to that, our estimate. So there may be, it may be a little bit of money that the city will be responsible for, but it's hard to say at this point because they put a 8.8% contingency on top of the estimate here in the last submittal. So with a lot of cushion, we're still like coming up short with the amount of funding that we have, but if you, at our base estimate, we're actually overfunded at the moment. So I know it's a long answer, but I'm trying to be clear with the funding.
Yeah, there's quite a bit of work the city's done to make this very expensive project very cost neutral for the residents. It's been very impressive as we watched it get chunked away. Yeah. Mr. Hawkins, I'm sorry, Mayor Hawkins.
Thank you, Mr. President. And that's the main thing is $8.6 million project. And when that initially was discussed, lots of folks up here, I think, turned green.
Yeah.
And the idea of spending that much money on something like this was not an exciting thing. But the efforts of individuals like our engineer, Mr. Riggs, going through and finding money for us to get this done with essentially funding the entire thing. I mean, obviously there's some cushion that'll be in there, but that's incredible that would take place. So great appreciation for our staff.
Yeah, I seem to recall at the time it was initially approved, I think council was expecting in the order of $1 to $2 million of actual city money that was going to be paid as our share just out of the gate. So it really has been an impressive amount of work to spread that around to other funding sources. All right, other questions or discussion? All right, seeing none, Ms. Browder, poll council.
Mr. Vanover?
Aye.
Mrs. Sullivan Wisecup?
Aye.
Mrs. Webster?
Aye.
Mr. Jacobs?
Aye.
Ms. McFarland?
Aye.
Mr. Gleaves?
Aye.
Mr. Anderson?
Aye. Ordinance 5, 2024 is approved with 7 affirmative votes. All right, next we have Ordinance 6, 2024. This also has the emergency clause and can be acted on tonight. Mr. Jacobs, when you're ready.
Ordinance number 6, 2024. An ordinance authorizing the execution of an agreement with Enable Injections Incorporated related to a job retention and creation incentive agreement and declaring an emergency. Whereas Enable Injections has requested assistance from the City of Springdale, the city, in the form of an incentive to encourage job retention and creation, and whereas the city is willing to provide the requested local incentive pursuant to the terms of a forgivable line of credit provided for the agreement between Enable Injections Incorporated and the city, the agreement, and whereas the city believes entering into the agreement will bring economic benefits to the city. Now therefore be it ordained by the Council of the City of Springdale, Ohio, members elected thereto concurring. Section 1, that the mayor is hereby authorized to enter into an agreement with Enable Injections Incorporated related to local job retention and creation substantially in the form attached as Exhibit A and incorporated herein by reference. Section 2, the Finance Office Tax Commissioner is hereby authorized to make payments to Enable Injections Incorporated pursuant to the terms of the agreement. Section 3, council hereby finds and determines that all formal actions relative to the passage of this legislation were taken in an open meeting of this council, and that all deliberations of this council and of its committees, if any, which resulted in formal action were taken in meetings open to the public in full compliance with applicable legal requirements, including Section 121.22 of the Ohio Revised Code. Section 4, that this ordinance is hereby declared to be an emergency measure necessary for the immediate preservation of the public peace, health, safety, and general welfare, and pursuant to Article 2, Section 6 of the Charter, shall be effective immediately upon its passage. The reason for said declaration of emergency is the need to execute the agreement so the city can begin to benefit from its terms at the earliest possible date. Section 5, the ordinance shall take effect on the earliest date allowed by law.
All right, council, you've heard the reading of Ordinance 6, 2024. It does have the emergency clause attached. What is your pleasure?
Move to adopt.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Questions or discussion? Mr. Gleaves.
Yes, Mr. President. Don't they have a location in Evendale? And is that included in the transformation to Springdale?
I believe we're lucky enough to have our Economic Development Director here. Mr. Kuchka, is that all right if he addresses this?
Thank you, Mr. President. This is new facility for the company, new employment in the region. So they're going to have multiple they already do have multiple locations throughout the area, but this is going to be brand new growth for them.
Other questions? Was there anything else you wanted to add?
I can give a few stats on the project if you'd like.
I think that'd be good.
All right.
Thank you.
So Enable is a medical device company that develops and manufactures wearable devices for injectable therapy. So kind of a patch and a gizmo that you can place on your body, administers medicine over a period of time. This replaces some therapies where you have to go into a hospital or a medical office and be on an IV for a long time. They're going to be going to the Springdale Commerce Park, the new building at the corner of Princeton Pike and Crescentville Road. They're looking to lease half of the 180,000 square foot facility, creating approximately 250 jobs over 3 years. Full-time employment payroll of $18.9 million, which equates to a $94,000 average salary. So these are very good jobs. And the company on top of that is going to invest $100 million in building improvements and equipment. The incentive is structured as a 13-year letter of credit with staggered percentages. The total projected value to the company over the term of the agreement is $1.9 million. The projected net payroll tax revenue to the city after incentives is $1.6 million. I'd like to highlight a non-standard provision that's in this agreement that's not in most of our agreements, which is we require the company to pay the city up to $850,000 if it fails to establish operations here within 18 months or ceases operations in Springdale before the end of this agreement, which is 2037. The repayment is reduced every year by the amount of net earnings taxes collected by the city until that obligation goes away. This provision exists because of the next item on the agenda, which I can talk about now or I can talk about when that item comes up, whatever you prefer.
Go ahead. Yeah, okay. Let's finish the idea.
So the next item is part of the overall incentive package that was proposed to win this investment, which is the TIF reimbursement agreement. So the Springdale Commerce Park TIF is currently generating about $1 million a year for the first 2 buildings that were completed in 2021. We have not received any TIF revenue from the brand new buildings that were just completed in January. $6.8 million in Port Authority bonds were issued in 2018 for the construction of the road and other utilities to allow that park to happen. The city back then pledged $500,000 annually towards repayment of those bonds through 2045. The annual amount remaining after Port Authority and school district payments is about $444,000. So for this phase 1 only, that's to be clear, the phase 2 buildings are going to be generating a brand new tranche of money that goes into the TIF. So the phase 1 TIF has now accumulated $854,000 in unobligated funds. The TIF revenue for the second phase buildings, which were just completed, is not obligated to anything except school compensation payments. So starting next year, the TIF should be collecting about $800,000 to $1 million annually in unobligated funds that we will have a decent amount of discretion to use for eligible purposes. So the proposed agreement, that is the next item on the agenda, is a TIF reimbursement agreement to the developer. The agreement states the city will reimburse the developer $850,000 within 60 days of the two conditions being met: receiving a copy of a fully executed lease with Enable injections, and the Springdale building permits are issued to start construction of tenant finishes for Enable injections. So the payments to the developer is going to be made out of the restricted TIF fund, not the city general fund. The payment is to reimburse the cost of infrastructure work not covered by the Port Authority bonds that were issued back in 2018. There's still about $1 million that the developer paid out of their own pocket for the road work. And the developer will pass through those savings to Enable injections. So it's kind of a package deal, these next two items, but that's why that repayment clause is in the job creation retention agreement.
And what doesn't come through in all those numbers and the TIF discussion is how exciting this is for Springdale, right? This is a very competitive company, a growth company in the high-tech area that's choosing Springdale to build out into our Commerce Park. Very competitive, and it's a lot of good jobs coming into Springdale. So it's an exciting thing. It doesn't cross when we talk about TIF and numbers and percentages, but there should be streamers and balloons that come along with these types of agreements because this is good jobs coming into our community.
And it's a high-growth company. The president of this company he founded another medical device company in the Cincinnati area called AtriCure, which eventually went public. And it's a very, very large company now. And the president of this company now has said his plans to take Enable as an IPO as well in the future. So I think we have big growth ahead of us with this company. Hopefully they'll continue to grow here.
Yeah. We don't always see the work that goes on behind the scenes with economic development. This is one of those cases where it's very visible, and we appreciate that. Was there somebody else that wanted to speak? Or
There's a representative for the company. He's with KMK Consulting, who worked on behalf of the company with us to negotiate this package. Brandon Simmons. I don't know if I was looking over to see if he wanted to say anything.
I'll be very brief. No, again, I'm Brandon Simmons. I am the Managing Director of Economic Development for KMK Consulting. I worked at Ready Cincinnati prior to this. I was the VP of Project Management, and so understanding the magnitude of an opportunity like this comes fairly well for someone who's been in the industry for about 13 years. What I will say is that I don't know that this project happens without the leadership of Andy. So you guys are aware, we talk about how competitive it was. There were 6 other communities that were involved in hunting down this opportunity. Of those 6 communities, Springdale ended up being a finalist. At one point in time in the process, Springdale was actually no longer being considered. Andy came forward, being innovative, being creative, willing to work with the company, hearing the company's needs. And as a result of that, you guys are getting 250 plus new jobs, 100 million plus in capital investment, quality wages by one of the premier brands in healthcare in the entire state. And so again, I want to give kudos to obviously the community, the leadership of Andy and his entire team, because without him, I don't know that this project moves forward at Springdale. So
I appreciate those comments. Absolutely.
I don't hit my wallet. Didn't pay me to say that, but that is on behalf of the company. Thank you. And that is from Mike Hooven, again, the founder of AtriCure, asking us to also say thank you and give credit where credit's due. So.
Yeah. Yep. And we get the glory job of now voting for it and putting it in its fate. We appreciate that. All right, any other questions or discussion? All right, Ms. Browder, if you could poll council.
Mr. Vanover?
Aye.
Mrs. Sutherland-Wisecup?
Aye.
Mr. Jacobs?
Aye.
Ms. McFarland?
Aye.
Mrs. Webster? Aye. Mr. Gleaves?
Aye.
Mr. Anderson?
Aye. Ordinance 6, 2024 passes with 7 affirmative votes. All right, next we have Ordinance 7, 2024. As you heard, these are related, but we still have to take them one at a time. This also has the emergency clause attached. Mr. Jacobs, when you're ready.
Ordinance number 7, 2024, an ordinance approving and authorizing the execution of a tax increment financing reimbursement agreement, approving related matters and declaring an emergency. Whereas pursuant to ordinance number 35-2018, the TIF ordinance adopted by this City Council, the Council of the City of Springdale, Ohio, the City, on June 20th, 2018, the City exempted certain parcels of real property, the exempted property, within the Springdale Commerce Park TIF site, and declared certain public improvements, the public improvements, to be a public purpose. all as further described in the TIF ordinance. And whereas pursuant to the TIF ordinance, owners of the exempted property are required to make service payments in lieu of taxes, the pilots, directly to the Hamilton County Treasurer based on the incremental value of the exempted property. And whereas in accordance with the TIF ordinance and Ohio Revised Code Section 5709.42, this council established the Springdale Commerce Park TIF Site Public Improvement Tax Increment Equivalent Fund, the TIF Fund, into which the pilots have been and are to be deposited. And whereas, at the request of Springdale Commerce Park Owner LLC or an entity related thereto, the owner, and Enable Injections Incorporated, Enable Injections, the city desires to use pilots to reimburse the owner for a portion of the costs. The costs of certain public improvements benefiting the exempted property and located within the city by entering into a tax increment financing reimbursement agreement, the TIF agreement with the owner. Whereas in accordance with the terms of the TIF agreement, amounts used to reimburse the owner for costs previously incurred to acquire and construct the public improvements shall be provided to Enable Injections to pay a portion of the costs of the tenant improvements to be incurred by Enable Injections in connection with its location of operations within the city. And whereas the city has determined that it is in the best interest of the city to enter into the TIF agreement and consummate the transaction set forth therein, because the city will receive substantial economic and non-economic benefits from Enable Injections operations within the city, which will create jobs, stimulate economic growth in the city, and enable the exempted property to be put to its highest and best use for the benefit of the people of the city. And whereas Section 13 of Article 8 of the Ohio Constitution provides that to create or preserve jobs and employment opportunities and to improve the economic welfare of the people of the state, it is a public interest and proper public purpose for the state or its political subdivisions to lend aid or credit for industry, commerce, distribution, and research. And now therefore be it ordained by the Council of the City of Springdale, members elected thereto concurring. Section 1, that the recitals to this ordinance are incorporated herein by reference. Section 2, that the form of TIF agreement on file with this council providing for the reimbursement of a portion of the cost of public improvements by the city from money deposited into the TIF fund is hereby approved and authorized with changes and completions thereto that are not inconsistent with this ordinance, not substantially adverse to the city, and approved by the mayor. The mayor, for and in the name of the city, is hereby authorized to execute and deliver the TIF agreement in substantially that form, along with any changes or completions thereto, provided that the approval of such changes and completions thereto by the mayor and the character of those changes and completions as not being substantially adverse to the city will be evidenced conclusively by the signature of the mayor. Section 3, for the avoidance of doubt, the costs paid by the city shall be in the aggregate amount of $850,000 and shall constitute a special obligation of the city payable solely from the amounts on deposit in the TIF fund as described in the TIF agreement. No other funds are pledged to the payment of the costs, and neither the owner nor any other beneficiary of the payment of the costs has a right to have taxes levied for the payment of the costs. Funds on the deposit in the TIF fund in the amount of $850,000 are hereby appropriated to pay the costs as set forth in the TIF agreement, and the fiscal officer of the city is hereby authorized to make payments in satisfaction of the costs in accordance with the TIF agreement. Section 4, that this council hereby authorizes and directs the mayor or other appropriate officers, officials, and employees of the city to make such arrangements as are necessary and proper for the payment of the costs in accordance with the TIF agreement. This council further hereby authorizes and directs those officers to prepare and sign all agreements and instruments and to take any other actions as may be appropriate to implement this ordinance. Section 5, that is hereby found and determined that all formal actions of council concerning and relating to the passage of this ordinance were taken in an open meeting of this council, and that all deliberations of this council and of any of its committees that resulted in such formal action were taken in meetings open to the public in compliance with all legal requirements, including Ohio Revised Code Section 121.22. Section 6, that this ordinance shall be an emergency measure necessary for the preservation of the public peace, health, safety, and general welfare, and subject to the terms of Article 2D3D of the Charter, be effective immediately. The reason for the emergency is the immediate need to enable the parties to execute the TIF agreement as soon as possible so that Enable Injections can promptly commence operations within the city, thereby creating a significant economic benefit and enhancement to the city at the earliest possible time.
All right, Council, you've heard the reading of Ordinance 7, 2024. It does have the emergency clause attached. What is your pleasure?
Move to adopt.
Second.
All right, moved and seconded. Other questions or discussion? All right, seeing none, Ms. Browder, if you poll council.
Mr. Vanover?
Aye.
Mr. Gleaves?
Aye.
Mr. Jacobs?
Aye.
Mrs. Webster?
Aye.
Okay. Ms. McFarland?
Aye.
Mrs. Sullivan Wisecup?
Aye.
Mr. Anderson?
Aye. Ordinance 7, 2024 is approved with 7 affirmative votes. Let me be the first to welcome Enable Injections. Past whoever else has welcomed them. We hope you have a long and fruitful time here and look forward to welcoming you formally once all that lease and build-out's done. All right. Now cue the streamers and balloons. We never got those set up, did we? All right, moving on. Old business. Does anybody have old business to bring before council? Mr. Vanover.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just want to give a tip of the hat to Mr. Yule because yesterday, about 2 o'clock in the afternoon, I was doing my neighborhood stroll and the Amazon carts were out. I sent him a text with pictures and he got right on it. And also I noticed, and I forgot to send you the street light on the northbound side, right opposite 84 Lumber's driveway on 747. The lens is broken and down, so I know we'll want to get on that. But it's amazing what you see when you're out strolling around. But that's it.
All right. Any other old business? New business? Anyone have new business to bring before council? All right. Seeing none, we'll move on to meetings and announcements. Ms. Sullivan-Weiskup.
Thank you, Mr. President. Planning Commission has been canceled this month. We didn't have any submissions.
Mayor Hawkins.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just a reminder, the SYB Cinema Horse Races, February 24th at 7 p.m. at the Rec Center, $15 per ticket, as well as on March the 13th at 7 p.m. in the Rec Center, we're going to have a State of the City address. Invite people to come out. You'll get to hear information from every department in the city and what's going on and what will be going on in 2024. Thank you. That'll be March the 13th at 7 p.m. at the Rec Center.
Ms. McFarland.
Thank you, Mr. President. There will be a Board of Health meeting tomorrow evening, February 8th. Again, our new time is 6:30 p.m. Next to Chambers. And then SYB has asked me to give a little more information. Tickets can be bought at the Rec Center now, anytime now up to the event, or they can be bought at the door. Cashback will be available for the betting windows. Each ticket includes drink tickets, which would be either 3 beer or seltzer drinks or 2 liquor drinks. Each ticket includes an entry into the grand prize, which is either your choice of $500 in cash or a Weber grill, which is valued at $1,000. In addition, we will also have split the pot tickets available to purchase, raffle tickets available to purchase. Some of those prizes include Bengals, things from the Bengals, from the Reds, Artisan Hair Design, Sam's, Acres Golf Course, FC Cincinnati. You can reserve a table at the Rec Center or message SYB on Facebook, and you can follow them on Facebook as well to stay up to date. So there's a lot of exciting things coming for that night. So that's it.
All right. Mr. Gleaves.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have a few things to cover. First of all, the BZA meeting for the 27th of this month has been canceled, and there's some training that's scheduled for all the BZA members March 26th at 5 p.m. And I want to make a report on something that I did January 19th. I took a ride with an officer, Sergeant Eric Lanvigen, at 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. We went on patrol through the city, looking for just ordinary concerns, and we got a call about a dog that got away from its elderly owners, and we went to Beacon Hills and Oxford Hills to look for the dog, and we didn't find it. But while we were on patrol, I was able to see the flock camera system, which is a very good system that's all throughout Cincinnati and the suburbs. It's a camera system that scans your license plates, and it immediately has an alert that goes to the officer on his computer, and it has everything from a stolen vehicle, missing person, expired license, anything that needs to alert the officer that this automobile may need to be looked at. It's a very good tool. I've seen them. We have a few in Springdale. It's called a flock camera system. We also talked a lot about, you know, his job. He's been on the job for 17 years for Springdale. That's really good to retain our officers. He loves Springdale. He grew up in, I believe, the Lakota area, Lakota graduate. And he really likes working for Springdale. 17 years shows that. We also went over to Springdale Parks and saw a vehicle that had been stuck from an OVI incident. And we got there just as the tow truck was there pulling it away. This was good for me because a lot of people, when I was campaigning, was asking about what did the police do, what things do we have, and so I decided to just meet with the police chief, and I plan to do this periodically, quarterly, and I think it's good for anyone to know what the police do. And one thing that was very telling, and I have to say kudos to our maintenance department. On January 19th, we got about 2.5 inches of snow, and they did a fantastic job. And I got to see it firsthand because I went out on patrol. And one thing the officer said is that when he came from his 17 years of coming from Westchester to Springdale in the winter, he feels very comfortable here because the maintenance department does such a good job. And that says a lot. So, got another thing I want to cover also. Reached out to a few people who have given a lot of their time and service to the city of Springdale, and in observance of Black History Month, I would like to recognize people who cut a trail for a lot of people like me and a lot of others out there as we speak. I'd like to start by recognizing Miss Barbara Ewing. Miss Ewing was the first African-American female to be elected to Springdale Council. She was elected in December 1993. She served just one term. She passed away December 24th, 2023. Her services were attended by Mayor Hawkins, Councilmember Webster, and myself, where a proclamation from the city of Springdale was given to her family for her service. Mrs. Ewing's daughter is now carrying on her legacy of service to the city of Springdale as a nurse in Springdale's health department. I also like to recognize Don Darby. Don Darby is a mentor to me, a mentor to many. Mr. Darby served on the Springdale Planning Commission from 1988 to 2022. Most of those years was a chairman. He served as a member of the Civil Service Commission from 1991 to 1994. He served as treasurer in 2019. He served as a member of the City of Springdale CRA Housing Council from 2020 to 2022. And he also touched a lot of lives in the Princeton district as a Princeton City School superintendent. A lot of people have looked up to him, and when he did his service here in Springdale, it meant a lot to our whole community. He was inducted into Hall of Fame just this last year. And the interesting thing about these two is they both were in education, so they touched so many people, including myself. One last person today that I want to recognize is our chief, Fire Chief Stanley. He wrote this to me earlier today. He said, "Thank you very much for taking time to reach out to me today. I'm humbled to be honored that you will that you would like to include me in a list of such wonderful people to recognize. I am extremely grateful for your thoughtfulness. I will list below some of the details of my career here in Springdale Fire Department. They are first full-time black firefighter paramedic, 1999 to 2010. First full-time black fire captain, 2010 to 2013. First black assistant fire chief, 2013 to 2021. First fire chief, 2021 to present. He says here, I served at our department for 24 years and 10 months. I will fully be vested April 12th, completing 25 years of service. I'd like to just say that we all stand on the shoulders of others, and I know I do. And it's just really, really, really meaningful to me that to be in this seat, and I don't take it for granted. So I just want to make sure that we take this opportunity to recognize these people that spent so much of their life serving our city. And next meeting, I'll have some more. So with that, I'm done.
All right, thank you, Mr. Gleaves. Appreciate you taking the time and effort to recognize so many people that have served the city as part of Black History Month. I think it's great to always go back and acknowledge that. So if you're planning to do it next time, we can certainly add an item to the top of the agenda just to have a presentation, just so we can make sure people know that it's coming and make sure it's recognized appropriately. I appreciate that.
Mr. President.
All right. Other meetings or announcements? All right. Moving on, communications from the audience. At this point, I'm opening up communications from the audience. Anyone that would like to address council for any reason can come forward. Second call. Third and final call. Closing communications from the audience. Next, we'll turn to Mr. Jacobs for updates on legislation still in development, as well as a recap in whichever order it makes the most sense to you.
Thank you, Mr. President. As you review your internal memorandum, item 1 was addressed by Ordinance 3, 2024, an ordinance amending Chapter 39 of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Springdale. That was passed with 7 affirmative votes. Item 2 was addressed by Ordinance 4, 2024, an ordinance amending Chapter 154 of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Springdale, Ohio. That passed with 7 affirmative votes. Item 3 was addressed by Ordinance 5, 2024, an ordinance authorizing the city administrator to enter into a memorandum of understanding with the state of Ohio, Department of Transportation for the use of jobs and commerce funds to be applied to the cost of the Northland Boulevard reconstruction project and declaring an emergency. That passed with 7 affirmative votes. Item 4 was addressed by Ordinance 6, 2024, an ordinance authorizing the execution of an agreement with Enable Injections Incorporated related to a job retention and creation incentive agreement and declaring an emergency. That passed with 7 affirmative votes. All other issues. Oh no, sorry, got one more. Apologies. Item 5 was addressed by Ordinance 7, 2024, an ordinance approving and authorizing the execution of a tax increment financing reimbursement agreement, approving related matters, and declaring an emergency. That also passed with 7 affirmative votes. And then requested for next meeting, we have item 6, an ordinance authorizing the purchase of certain real property associated with the Northland Boulevard reconstruction project and declaring an emergency. All of the matters are forthcoming unless the administration has anything.
All right. With that, we have item 14 before us.
So moved.
Second.
We're adjourned.